This story comes from a Reddit user. I was working as security at a strip club for extra money in college. We had a pretty standard bouncer interview process, but one particular applicant stood out. He was mid-30s, and oddly enough, he told us that he used to work in security as a police officer, but retired early due to PTSD. We let him go. So he tried again 6 months later. Same result. 6 months after that, he tried once more. And at this point, it was clear that he really wanted the job, so we decided to let him go. He starts off with a very generic cover letter and resume that says he's a retired police officer who's looking for some extra money. It doesn't say anything about PTSD or past trauma. There are no red flags on his background check. The guy shows up to the interview dressed in all black with a black shirt and black pants. And when we asked him why he was dressed like that, he said that he always dresses like that because it's easier when you're going undercover. But of course, this is a strip club, not something where you need to go undercover. Now he becomes agitated and tells us that he's actually dressed casually, that he can dress better than this. But he just didn't want to because he doesn't want to look flashy in front of other people. That's when I start to get creeped out by him. His whole attitude was weird. So now we decide to let him go again, and he ends up coming back again a couple of months later. At this point, the manager who's normally chill is now worried, and he even looks into the guy's backstory. Turns out the guy was actually a cop in a small town that has unheard any complaints against him, and the manager decides to hire him because he feels bad for the guy. Maybe if he'd had a decent interview, he wouldn't have been hired. But the fact of the matter was he'd been applying for months and hadn't made any progress, so the manager just wanted to help him out. Well, the guy does end up getting hired. And he did seem nice, if a bit quiet. And his body language was always closed off. He liked to keep his arms crossed or hold his hands behind his back. He also refused to shake anyone's hand. But we figured that maybe it was because of his PTSD. Well, he works there for about a week before my shift starts overlapping with his. And that's when things start to get really freaky. One of the girls goes missing. She didn't show up to her shift and we couldn't get in touch with her. So we ended up filing a missing persons report. Then she shows up at work the next night, completely fine. It turns out she had gotten drunk and passed out after work, so she just missed her shift. But she wasn't reported missing until almost 24 hours after she disappeared. She was only 19. So of course we questioned our new employee. And although he swore that he didn't know anything about it, he seemed super nervous during the conversation. A little while after that incident, we hear gunshots in the parking lot outside. And when we go to check it out, we see that someone has shot one of the cars. Luckily, no one was hurt. But of course we call the cops, and when they ask us if we have any security footage, we tell them that we don't. But luckily, our new guard saw what happened and gives them a description of the suspect. They never catch the guy who shot at the car. A few days later, one of the managers walks in on two girls making out in the bathroom. When he asks them what they're doing, one of them says that she's trying to make out with the other girl so that she can take a break without it counting as a tardy. The manager says that is fine, and to do whatever they need to do quickly so they can get back to work. While they're making out, the second girl whispers to the first girl, "I think that guard is watching us." They both stop and look around to see if anyone was listening, but no one else was there. Then they go back to kissing, and the manager leaves to get back to work. Now, he doesn't think too much of it until he hears a commotion coming from the bathroom. When he goes to investigate, he sees our guard standing there with his face pale and his eyes wide. And when he asks the guard what happened, the guard stutters out, I don't know. I just saw two girls in the bathroom and I thought they needed help. So I went in there and the one girl started screaming and I panicked and ran out. The manager thinks it's weird that the guard would think that helping two girls make out was his job, but he lets it go. Later that night, another manager tells me that one of the dancers says she's being stalked by a fan. And then I remember that the dancer who was making out in the bathroom earlier had told her friend that a guard was watching her. I bring it up to the manager, and he tells me to talk to our guard and see if he knows anything about it. I go and talk to him, and he tells me that he hasn't seen the girl anywhere and that he would never stalk one of the dancers because he is a family man. He also says that he definitely wasn't the guy that the girls were talking about because he doesn't know how to drive, and he never got his license because he lived in a small town where everything was walking distance. At this point, I didn't know whether to believe him or not, but I decided to play along. I thanked him for his help and went back to my post at the door. A little while later, I hear a scream from inside the club, and when I go to investigate, I see the same girl who was almost kidnapped in the bathroom with another guy. They're both crying and freaking out. I try to calm them down and ask what happened, and the guy says that he was just trying to use the bathroom. When he walked in on two girls making out, he accidentally touched one of them while he was trying to leave. And then the other girl started screaming, and now they were both freaking out. Once again, I believe him, and I let him go, and he runs off. When I go to the bathroom to check it out, I notice that the door was propped open using a cleaning cart. At this point, I became very suspicious of the guard, and I propped the door open using a different cart and waited. A few minutes later, I hear some commotion coming from inside the bathroom, and I go to investigate. When I open the door, I see our guard and the girl who was almost kidnapped standing in the bathroom. And when they see me, they both panic and try to come up with an excuse. The guard claims that he was just checking the bathroom for drugs and alcohol, and the girl says that she was just using the bathroom. At this point, I tell them to come with me, and I walk them over to the manager's office. I explain to the manager what I had seen and what I had heard, and the manager immediately fires the guard. Well, the girl who was almost kidnapped later admitted that she had lied, and that she was actually making out with the guard. The other girl, who she had told to go check on her in the beginning, was actually their lookout, and they had planned to frame one of the other dancers for assault. As for the guard, he was married with kids. When his wife found out about what he had been doing, she took the kids and left him. He eventually moved back to his hometown in defeat. That was Mafia, and if you like that story, then check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new videos every single day.